Welcome to AMX82. I apologize for the 2-minute delay as we had some technical difficulties. The book we are reading is Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. Daring Greatly, being the man in the arena, the woman in the arena, fully living, absorbing life. That is what Daring Greatly is all about. Now today's video, AMX82, is called Trust, Worthiness, and Shame. Trust, Worthiness, and Shame. And I'm going to start out by talking about this idea of trust. In the last book I read, Urban Meyer's book, he talked about 3 ways to develop trust with the people around you, with your team. Brené Brown in Daring Greatly talks about it in a different light, equally as valuable, just in a different light. She says, and also we're talking about this idea of vulnerability. So yesterday we talked about vulnerability, putting yourself out there, being all in, living a, as she says, a wholehearted life. Experiencing that election day. I understand that, no problem. She says, trust is a product of vulnerability that grows over time and requires work, attention, and full engagement. Trust isn't a grand gesture. It is a growing marble collection. That's an analogy she uses in the book. Trust is a product of vulnerability that grows over time and requires attention, work, and full engagement. If you want to develop trust with anyone around you, it's not a single act. Trust is developed over time. For example, these videos, let me give you a cut and dry example of how to develop trust. These videos, AM Excellence videos, we're in morning 82. There is a certain level of trust that exists between you, viewer, and me, video giver / speaker. That trust was developed through 82 consecutive days of producing these videos. If you want to develop trust in your life, you've got to earn it. You can't just snap your fingers. You can't just make one video and say, hey, everyone come to me. This is a lesson that I learned over time. But think of that. Trust is a gradual process. It's not something that just happens. You have to earn it. The next thing I want to talk of is this idea of surrounding yourself with the best. In the last several episodes, I've talked about this idea of a community building. There are people, yesterday I sent out the notice that we'd be recording live today. There are people I tagged in that post on Facebook that are part of this community that I look at and I think, no, they're it. They are part of the community. Every one of them is watching right now. Kathleen, Derek, Andrew, you name it. You're part of the community. And touching on this idea of vulnerability, putting yourself out there, the author goes on to say, the vulnerability journey is not the kind of journey we can make alone. We need support. We need folks who will let us try on new ways of being without judging us. We need someone to pull us up off the ground when we get kicked down in the arena. We need to surround yourself with the best, right? You've made a commitment to fight. I'm going to fight. I'm not going to let life happen to me. I'm going to happen to life. No matter what my situation is, no matter what my adversity is, just like the book, The Obstacle is the Way, and Stoic philosophy, I will fight. You will not own me, life. I will own you. That journey is not easy. You're going to get knocked down. You could get knocked out. It's not going to conspire. Life, the world is not going to conspire to work for you. It conspires to work against you. So take comfort in that community. Understand you need to surround yourself with those people. If you find yourself pushing people away, not letting them into your life, not letting them into your journey, chances are that you're afraid of vulnerability, that you feel shame, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. So if you find yourself pushing people away, consider why. Why am I really keeping people far away from me? Are you afraid of what they might see in you? And my response to that is, what's on the other side of fear? Nothing. We all have our downfalls. We all have our less than stellar moments, our less than stellar days. We're a community. Embrace that community. Another thing that she says, which is really, really awesome, the work I did with Penn State Harrisburg, I learned a lot from the basketball coach. And he says you get what you celebrate. You get what you celebrate. Meaning that if I'm honest with you, chances are you're going to be honest with me. If I'm energetic with you, you're going to be energetic with me. If I show you respect, It's going to increase the chances of you showing me respect. It's not a catch-all. It's not a solve-all, but that's the general energy that you get what you put out. The author goes on to say, vulnerability begets vulnerability. Courage is contagious. Vulnerability begets vulnerability. Courage is contagious. In my life and my experiences, I've been out there. I've been all in. I've lived wholeheartedly. I've won and I've lost on a national, international stage. That's a sense of vulnerability. That opens up a line of communication with people who know me to say, hey, I really appreciate that. This happened to me. It creates this more open line of communication with this community that we're building with AM Excellence. It's the same way. People in your own life understand. If you want someone to open up with you, you've got to open up with them. There are imperfections in these videos, but where I'm imperfect. I do the best I can with what I have. Assume that mindset. Do the best you can with what you have. Stop trying to be perfect. The best performances, whether you're a speaker, whether you're a whomever, is a conversation. When you're walking into a job interview, when you're parenting, if you're a teacher, if you're any sort of professional, understand, instead of looking out into this crowd of people and thinking, oh my goodness, I'm so nervous. Oh my gosh, everyone's going to laugh at me if I make a mistake. Stop thinking about yourself. There's an acronym, STAY. Stop thinking about yourself. Start thinking about them. Start thinking about their imperfections. The comfort that you feel in community that we're talking about is the same comfort they're going to feel in community. She goes on to continue to talk about the power in community, her family, her closest friends. And then she goes on to say something that is so stinking true, and it took me so long to realize. She says, nothing has transformed my life more than realizing that it's a waste of time to evaluate my worthiness by weighing the reaction of the people in the stands. Nothing has transformed my life more than realizing that it's a waste of time to evaluate my worthiness by weighing the reaction of the people in the stands. Let's go back to the man in the arena. Let's go back to Theodore Roosevelt, the person who is marred by blood and sweat and tears. Nothing, the author is saying. I am confirming her sentiment. I'm sure you will confirm my and her sentiment. Nothing is so useless, so wasteful as judging your worthiness by the people who are in the stands. She goes on to say, and I have learned, you should judge your worthiness on the investment that you put in. Doesn't matter what we're talking about. Judge your worthiness by the investment you put in, and understand that the people who matter. This may sound like a broken record. This may sound like a cliche, but as a million people have said, Tim Ferriss being one of them, there is truth buried within cliches. The only people that matter are those closest to you. I'm creating an ebook, and I'll have it available here soon, but I'm creating an ebook, and I mentioned that idea of of understanding worst case scenarios. What's the worst that can happen when I go out and fight right now? I could get knocked out cold on live television. Okay, that's terrible. Is my wife going to leave me? No. Are my children going to leave me? No. Are my best friends going to leave me? No. Okay, it's not that bad. So understand that those closest to you are not going to judge you. Be the man. Be the woman in the arena. She goes on to talk about self-worth. So trust, worthiness, and shame. She goes on to talk about self-worth and just saying how it's a slippery slope to assess your self-worth on a particular outcome or a particular product. Now, that sounds safe. That sounds like, oh, well, you're just too afraid to win or lose. No, I'm not too afraid to win or lose. I love winning. I love winning more than anything there is. I love putting my all into a cause, into a fight, into a project, into a podcast, into a book, into a speaking program, and winning, executing, I was going to say perfectly, just executing at optimal level. I love that more than anything in the world. But I have learned from 25 stinking years of either being, the champion or boom, falling flat on my face, that it is pointless to assess your worthiness, your self-worth on that outcome. Rather, every single day. You know how I judge myself when I go to bed at night? Hey, did I get up early this morning? Did I read? Did I make an AM Excellence video? Did I help people feel good about themselves? Yes, 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 yes. Boom, got 0 downloads today. Man, that really stinks. But my self-worth is not judged on that. It's not an easy thing to do, but by putting in the work over and over and over and over again, your self-worth becomes focused on that process. She then goes on to talk about this idea of shame resilience. Shame resilience. When you feel shame, and I was talking to Dredd, my co-host, a little bit ago. We just recorded an episode of A Fighter's Mindset, the Spaniard podcast. And I was talking to him and I said, I don't resonate with this word shame. I don't feel shameful about myself. I feel bad. I feel lack of self-confidence, but I've never felt unworthy. I've never felt shame in that sense. And he said, well, you know, it's a very similar sentiment that you're talking about, and many people do assess to what you might say lack of self-confidence, many people would assess as shame. And the author Brene talks about shame resilience, meaning you're walking around with a shield, your shield of life. You don't want anyone to see your imperfections. Your hands are up, right? You don't want anyone to see your birthmark or your cellulite or your scar. You don't want anyone to see any of that, right? Because we're this shell of perfection. So that when you have up that shell of perfection, you're creating this shame that, oh my gosh, if someone sees me without my shirt on, oh my gosh, if someone hears my speech impediment, oh my gosh, if someone sees whatever it is, you're building up this shame. Shame resilience is when you take off that armor and you say, here I am, world. This is me, for better or for worse. I'm this, that, and that, which is really awesome. I'm this, that, and that, which is not really awesome. So building up that shame resilience, she goes on to say how this executing or building up the shame resilience then enables you to be that much more free, creative, energetic, innovative, etc., to have this energy for life because you're not so stinking concerned with staying in your shell of perfection. Because as Vince Lombardi says, perfection is unattainable, but if we chase perfection, we just might catch excellence. Throw perfection, throw that shame out the window, and let's start executing with excellence. She goes on to say, sometimes shame is the result of us playing the old recordings that were programmed when we were children or simply absorbed from the culture. I chuckled there because she creates this analogy of shame tapes. Shame tapes. For me, lack of self-confidence tapes. Dating ourselves tapes. Tapes, for the young people who are listening, are the things that were out there prior to compact discs. Compact discs were the things that were out there prior to MP3s and iTunes. But she talks about this idea of shame tapes playing over and over and over in your head, getting rid of that lack of self-confidence, getting rid of that shame, I am not worthy. And the biggest combatant to shame or lack of self-confidence that I have implemented, that I have discovered, the secret of all secrets, is action. When you're filling your day with action, when you are an executioner, a person who executes on a daily, minute-by-minute basis, there is no space in your mind for unworthiness. There is no space in your mind for shame because it is completely filled with action, with do. I learned that fighting these animals, that through action, I was able to get rid of that lack of self-confidence, or if you want to call it shame, you can call it shame. So the last thing I'll end with is shame resilience is the ability to say, this hurts, this is disappointing, maybe even devastating, but success and recognition and approval are not the values that drive me. My value is courage, and I was just courageous. You can move on, shame. So it's kicking shame out the door, smashing it, knocking it out, throwing it in the garbage can, being courageous. Vulnerability is the source of courage. The more you put yourself out there, the more you become comfortable with putting yourself out there, the more courageous you will become. The more courageous you become, the more courageous energy you will pass off to those around you and create that ripple effect that we're all shooting for. Thank you all for tuning in to AM Excellence 82. I will be back tomorrow morning, 6:30 a.m. for AM Excellence 83. In the meantime, if you enjoyed the video, if you took something from it, tag someone, share it. The shares and tags are increasing little by little, and I really appreciate every single one. Let's spread this message of excellence. Carpe diem, fight well.